Hey, MBA hopefuls. We're so excited to be with you today on MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast of all things business. We're here live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, bringing you tons of content about applying to business school and applying to MBA programs and getting in up close, personal, and intimate with many of the schools and even the test providers as we are today. And don't forget to like, subscribe if you want to get more content from MBA Waves. And we are here today on episode 129, and we're taking the temperature of what's actually happening with the GRE, because if you know, they have changed their content, their format, not content, their format from from many years prior, and we have a whole new test, and we're going to find out how new it really is and how it's going with them. So we want to know, has the test been received well? How are students enjoying it? How are they performing? We want to know, is there anything new in the works in terms of study material or the test itself? And are there any lessons learned from the test and the rollout? So as always, I'm here with Krithika and Eric, my co-hosts. Good to see you guys.
Hey,
Hi.
hello.
Hi.
Hey,
Hello.
hello. So we're also joined today by a seasoned guest. We're really happy to see you, Jay Bryant, over here from the ETS, and you're the Associate Director of the Business School Relations, Western USA and Canada, and that's a mouthful. So Jay, welcome back, and please
Thank
remind
you.
our audience exactly what your role is, and it's really great to see you.
Sure. Before I talk about my role, I'll talk about past roles, which got me to the role I'm in today, if that makes sense. I have my MBA. I got it. I hate to say it, but man, I think I graduated almost 20 years ago. But a little more than 20 years ago, I was going through what a lot of the folks that are listening in today were going through, looking at where I was going to go, what I was going to do. Wound up getting my MBA at Thunderbird School of Global Management, part of Arizona State now. And they hired me on when I graduated because I had an undergraduate in education, and then I studied marketing in my MBA and just stayed on and did recruiting, a lot of international recruiting. So I've worked in just about every continent. I don't think I ever recruited in Antarctica, but everywhere else we did. And did that there for about 10 years. I did oversee international student office, financial aid, admissions, recruiting, and student affairs in my time there. So admissions was the whole time. The other things kind of came in and out. Really awesome opportunity there. And then moved over to UC, University of California in San Diego, which was still about a 10-year-old school at that point, still getting in to be known in the market, and did the same thing over there. We had a lot more domestic students than international students, but still did very much the recruitment around the world, and loved it. So ETS was wanting to connect more and more with business schools, as more and more business schools were taking the GRE for admissions. And I served on an advisory board for them, and in some discussions realized, hey, there's some potential over here. So I jumped over to work for ETS. I work mostly with the GRE. There's a number of other products that the schools work with, but on a prospective student side, certainly the GRE is the one you'd know most, international students. TOEFL is the same organization. I don't work quite as much with it, but certainly have and do, and very familiar with the test. So, which also went through some changes in this last year, shortening the TOEFL. So it's been a busy last year and a half for us, getting all those tests together and ready for the market.
It's really pertinent that you do go through your whole background, Jay, because you started off in education, right?
Yep.
And then you moved into the business, and now you're basically in a hybrid of
Yep.
the two. And so I think it's really important for listeners to realize that that these tests, the GRE, the GMAT, are really grounded with education, and they are about knowledge. They're not. There's been so much controversy around tests recently, and there's you watch it, it feels like a volleyball match. Like, do we accept it? Do we not? Do we waive it? Do we not? So but the tests really are grounded. So it's great for our listeners to know that you are coming from an education background and doing this work. Can you give us a bit of an overview of the current GRE and what students should know about it and really where it
Sure.
came from and what's happening now?
Sure. And in the start of that, I want to respond a little bit to what you just said, which is the GRE, the GMAT, the SAT, whatever test it is that you're taking for admissions. I've always seen it as it's like a thermometer or a barometer or any a ruler, whatever. It's an instrument that gauges some sort of measurement. Now, how it is used, that's up to the people who use it. When I look at a thermometer, and we were just talking about this, Eric went to go grab a sweater because you're in Paris, I believe.
Actually, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area right now.
You're Washington, D.C. Okay, well, I've been watching the news. It's been cold up there. So he sees the thermometer and sees, oh, it's cold outside. I need to dress warmly. I'm in Dallas, Texas, where I think we're going to be about 75 degrees today.
Insane.
Though we were below freezing 2 days ago. Just keep that in mind. I look at the thermometer and I make a decision, which is I can wear shorts today. I may put on a jacket in the evening, something like that. But the point is, I don't get mad at the thermometer when it says that it's 20 degrees outside. I may get mad, but I can't get mad at the thermometer. It's what's happening around the thermometer. A thermometer is doing nothing more than measuring where the temperature is at that point. And that's the same thing with the GRE or GMAT or any other test. It is measuring your current capability in whatever it is that it's measuring. For us, the writing, the verbal, and the quantitative sections. And it may not give you the answer you want to have. It may say, you're not doing so great in the quant, you're not doing so great in the writing, whatever it says. It may say you're doing awesome. Let's hope for that. But then what you do with that information, what the schools do with that information, it goes from there. So that's how I've always stood on the debate. The standardized test is the only thing that is the same for every candidate. Now, granted, in the business school space, we accept GMAT and GRE at most schools, but the schools have used those long enough. They know what they're looking at and what the difference is and what to expect on each sort of test. But where you went to college, where you went to, I say some very rural regional school. I'm not picking on those at all, but are you getting the same education as if you were at MIT or Harvard or Stanford? Probably not. The same GPA is not going to be the same from one to the other. The material may be harder at those more top level schools. That those sorts of things make a difference. And of course your own income and things like that coming into undergraduate determines where you go for undergraduate, and that throws in some changes there. There's so many different things. Interviews, we all have internal biases. We do our best not to, but they exist. Just, the type job that you get, it's a lot of times based on who you know. I've been a bit addicted to the TV show Succession in the past few weeks. And there's a lot of who gets you the job and what I guess, as far as their secrets. But the point is, there's nothing in there that keeps, because it's their wealth and their connections get them up through that side, as opposed to being able to use something like the GRE or the GMAT or something else that you can show, hey, I can do this. I can do this at the top of the game. And that's really what they're about. Now, you asked what is on the GRE and those sorts of things. There's 3 sections, excuse me, and have been 3 sections for a long time on the test. I'll talk about writing first. Writing, they removed off the GMAT, but we left it on the GRE because we do feel it's very important. If I were still an admissions director, I would find it very important. I know many of them do. Let's just be honest. The generation now that is coming into graduate school grew up with a very different educational system and life experience than myself. And I have plenty of friends of different ages, and it's interesting to see the text messages or the emails that I will get from a younger generation that spelling doesn't seem quite as important. the organization, the thought. I've helped people write some cover letters and things like that, and just the formality with which I was trained to do it doesn't seem quite as strong as maybe it was before. That's a societal thing. But when you're in grad school, when you're out of grad school, I write emails all the time to my clients, and if I wrote like some of the text messages I got, or some of the things I see on Facebook and Twitter from other folks I know, I wouldn't be keeping my job. I have to keep it very formal. It has to be organized and flow.
Yeah,
So
Jay,
that,
you're absolutely right. I mean, even with some of my clients, I've seen that, coming from Gen Z or whatever, the level of formality is just isn't as it was before. And so I've had to correct some emails, like responding to the admissions person, and they're just like,
yeah,
"Hey, Donna," and no, Donna is not your friend. Like, dear Mrs. So and so, you know what I mean? So I think there has to be a healthy reminder of return to formality when you're communicating with the adcoms or even
right,
alumni. This is not your pal.
right.
What about a TikTok dance? Have you gotten one of those yet?
I'll do one
Not
right
yet,
now.
but I've got my shoes ready to go. So
Yeah, so the writing section is really there for you to prove that you can write in an organized fashion. Yes, are we checking grammar? Yes, are we checking your vocabulary? Yes, yeah, all the things are there. But at the end of the day, really, I'd say the most important thing is that you can write in an organized fashion that
okay.
someone can follow you. Just sitting down and writing a stream of consciousness, which I certainly do at 11 p.m. on Facebook, if you were to read my things there. But that's fine. That's that audience. When you're writing formal, you need to be able to get your ideas in order and express them, because they're going to a wide number of people, some more formal, some that may not care of that organization, but you got to make yourself understood. So
Would you say, is it fair to say that structure in this context of the writing section of the GRE structure counts more than content?
uh, I'm going to say equal. Now, I'm not a test grader, so I'm not sure exactly what percentages they use here and there, but they are both very important. The structure is very important. And probably the biggest piece of advice I can give on that. And I know when I was in high school, I hated it. My teachers always write an outline, make an outline, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, this is so
Boring.
annoying. Um, but then I started teaching high school, and I taught Spanish, but I taught AP level Spanish, which meant my students had to write. Ironically, the AP tests go through ETS as well. I wound up being an ETS Spanish AP test grader. Who knew? But what we were looking for was that there was this organization there. And I taught my students, okay, you have 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is on that test, it's 30 in the GRE, to write an essay. Take 30 seconds and make an outline. You don't need more than 30 seconds. And it can be, each bullet can be 1 or 2 words and just move on. But if you just go in there and start writing, you're going to get new ideas in your head, and they're going to come out right in the middle of nowhere and just really kind of make your essay kind of come out a little funky. So moving on from that, the quant section, I think, and probably even true if I look back 20 years ago to the GRE, that it was testing your vocabulary, and it was a lot of that, synonyms and antonyms and similes and things like that, which aren't on the GRE anymore. I hear that all the time about the analogies and stuff. I'm like, that hasn't been there in a long, more than well over a decade at this point. But what it is checking is that you can understand what you're reading. You can evaluate it, come back with what are the meanings here, what, excuse me, we most all of us have done, read that paragraph, what's the main idea? It goes a little more in depth with that, but that's a big part of it, is just understanding what you're reading. I don't know if you knew this, but every reading passage on the GRE comes from the real world. We do not write those to torture you. We find those. I can say we, like I'm writing the test. I don't write the test. Our test developers get these, pull them into the test, and then ask questions which are actually pertinent to it. Like, what's the author's feeling on this issue, or what what sentences in here will do that, or show that. Now, there are other parts where you're putting words in to paragraphs and choosing the right word based on their meaning and things like that. So yeah, there is a little bit that's vocabulary tested, of your vocabulary testing there, but it's not what it used to be 20 years ago. That's where I'm going with that.
Mhm.
It's really getting your understanding and comprehension of the language, use it, and can you prove that you understand what you're reading? We've all read things that we go back and like, I just read a whole page and have no idea what it just said. That's what you want to not do on the GRE.
Quick question, Jay. Do they do any edits? Do they do any edits to the essays and the things that they put in the reading?
Do they do edits? Not that I'm aware of. I think they're straight from the real world, newspapers, online articles. I'd say quality sources where they know they're getting things that were written by people who are good writers.
Thanks.
Finally, talking about the quant section, depending who you are, this could be the most intimidating section. Maybe it's your favorite section. I know for me, I was a liberal arts major in undergrad. I came in and took that quant section. Granted, at the time that I was there, I had to take the GMAT. I didn't have a choice. Not true these days, but very, very similar in the fact that what it's doing, it's not just testing, can you add and subtract and multiply? You know what? And I point this out every time because you get to use a calculator on the GRE in the quant section, I'm not sure on the GMAT. And I think back to my teachers who told me, it's not like you're going to have a calculator everywhere you go when you grow up. We get the last laugh on that because I got one. That's my iPhone right there. 1, 2, and then my computer 3, a second computer over here 4, and my iPad is just right over there. So I got 5 calculators right here. So that's not about that. It is about, can you take an issue, some sort of problem, and figure out how to get to the answer. I would always laugh and say, because seems like there's always some question about Farmer Bob and he didn't take all the measurements he needed. I'm like, well, he should have thought about that when he was doing that. But now I got to use geometry to figure out the answer he missed. It's things like that. Like what formula do I need to use here? What are the principles of geometry? What algebra could solve this problem? Recognizing in the words of the problem what I need to do to solve it. And that's really more what the quant section is about. It's not, can you do math? It is, can you use math to solve real world type problems?
So Jay, what I'm taking away is you summarize the case for standardized testing very nicely. And especially, I always feel that when you can write well, you can think well.
Mm-hmm.
And you also kind of showed how GRE would be something that can be used to prep for grad school. And a lot of people were very happy when GRE was made shorter in September of 2023 last year. So can you tell us more about how these changes have actually affected the test takers and how many are taking it and what's happened?
Sure. Well, I don't have exact numbers that I can share at this point on how many are taking it. I will say it is going well. I can't say that much. I can say in this last year, we've got numbers together. Each year, the number of submissions of GRE to programs has gone up. If you include all programs within business school, business analytics, finance, MBA, everything, it's about 50-50 at this point. MBA a little bit still maybe on the GMAT side, but there we go. So it's been going well. When we shortened the test, it was literally that. It was not changing the content. It was just taking 2 essays to 1, reducing the number of questions in the other. So number wise, as far as folks taking it, like I said, I don't have an exact number. I do, of course, join our internal meetings on numbers and how we're going, where we're going, and it's going pretty good. It's going quite good, actually. So we're pleased with it. And when I say that means that it's a little bit above where it was last year at this point. So that's exciting for us to hear. There were less changes on the GRE than there were on the GMAT. It might be partially effect of that people like, okay, GMAT's changed a lot. and GRE hasn't as much. I'm going to stick over there. So there we go.
All right. Well, that's fantastic news. It's good to hear things are going well. Always a risk when you have a change on the table. So I don't know. I mean, I know that you have some data, and maybe there's some data that officially can be shared or not. But I'll just ask the question. You can respond how you see possible. But do you have any data about how the GRE is accurately assessing students' readiness, specifically for business school? Because MBA Waves generally focus on MBA, but also various masters like MIM, Masters in Finance. So,
Yep.
What can you tell us?
What I will start with saying is the education industry is extremely iceberg level of slow. What do I mean by that? Is, there's this whole year that you're getting ready to apply, and then you're in your program for 2 years, and then you graduate, which means that there is very small numbers that start in January. The class that has taken the new GRE is going to start in August. So statistics of being able to see how they perform in that first year actually don't finish until May of 25, where we can really get in and do the deep analysis. That's going to be true of any admissions test. Did it show how they performed in their first year? We are doing a few things with schools right now where we do have volunteers that are taking the GRE that are already students in MBA programs. That's currently going on, so I don't have results from it. What I can say, we did very little change to the content of the GRE. And we did a full study, like I was saying before, where you take people who took it, and then after their first year, and then you can really do a deep dive into those statistics. We did that in 2014. I realize that is now 10 years ago. I'm sure we will be doing this again, 2025 or 26. Those numbers are just weird to say to me. But yeah, that's something that we do. We do a lot of research on that. There was so little change in the test. I don't see if there's going to be that much difference. Also, the scores we have done following that, and for the most part, if you scored a 160 and 162 before, you would score a 160 and 162 after. Of course, every test taker is a little different. It may go up or down a little bit, but for the most part, it's showing that it's consistent with what the scores were previously. We do have people who've taken it both before and after the change.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are nervous about that. It's a big subject, right? People are really worried about like if they're going to have a big drop. What are people? So that's interesting to know. I'm just curious what kind of sample size you have where you kind of tested that out.
Crossover numbers, I don't know the exact sample size. Several thousand for sure. I mean, they're statistically sound to look at, but I don't have exact numbers on the top of my head. That's
reassuring. Oh, thanks for that insight.
But if you think about it, lots of people take the GRE twice. Nobody wants to, but it happens. Yeah. So there's a lot of data out there for us to.
I think it happens a lot, I think, right? At least for the MBA programs, I think Bara can answer this more than anyone, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, when any prospective student that we speak with, we tell them you can plan on taking the test at least 2 times, whether it's the GMAT or the GRE, because the first time is almost a test run. No matter how prepared you are and how much you studied, it's still a new experience, and so it's worthwhile to just assume that you're going to be taking it twice. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I have a question, Jay, about the way that the test is set up and how the first quant and the first verbal sections, they seem to be slightly shorter than the second sections. Is that correct? Can you talk a little bit about the reasoning for that?
Sure. Again, I'm not a test developer, so I may don't go quoting me on this at some, Financial Times or something. I'll get some better to give the explanation there, but more or less, there's 2 sections in the GRE when you're taking a quant section, for example, or verbal. You get a set of 12 questions and a set of 15 questions. This is the same setup it was before, but I think it was something like 24 questions and 30 questions. I've pulled all that out of my mind, so I don't remember the number. But the first 12 are really your preliminary questions to figure out, is this person going to get a set of hard questions next, easy questions next, or in the middle next? I've described it like, hey, this is, it's almost like the going, if you're looking at like sports, if you perform really well in the tryout section, you're going to go out and, hey, you could be in the NFL or professional sports. Then there's those of us who are going to wind up on a club team, like just for fun on Saturday. Yeah, you can still win your section of your club section down here, and do fine. But the Super Bowl, which we just had here recently, to win that, you got to, go from this first section to the second section. It's harder, and be at the top of your game in that. So
Are you
really,
saying if I date Taylor Swift, I'll have a better GRE score?
Taylor Swift, he wasn't really playing the game, but if we are talking, musicians, I'm sure she's in that top box as a professional.
Smart cookie either way.
Exactly. So really that's what's doing. And then you can think that second question, that second set, maybe the low, if you got all of them wrong, you'd still get, I'm making up this number, but let's say you'd get probably still a 150 because you've proven that you're in the top set of test takers. You're not going to get a 130, but you're in here, this top set, but where in the top set? Are you, are you at the Super Bowl, or did you lose all your games this season? So that's kind of why there's a different number there, because that second one's really honing you in on your final score. The first one's setting you off on your next path.
Yeah, and continuing on that thread, you know how there's a lot of emphasis on data insights on the GMAT. And in fact, they brought in the whole new section in. I'm curious why there are a few data analysis type questions on the new GRE, and how do those skills get measured?
Sure. There are a couple questions on every test that are going to be data driven, where you're looking at a chart, a graph, or something, and having to use that information to come up with your answer. Again, it's using the math, looking at something and understanding how to use the math to get to the answer. Now, we do not have an entire section of it. I don't think there's been market pressure for us to get an entire section of that. I will be quite frank. When I was on campus as the director of admissions and there was an IR score, most of us didn't pay much attention to it. Like, it's a good one, move on. Not like the verbal and quantitative sections, which winds up in your average, which winds up in your rankings. And so the IR section was, it was there. We looked at it, but it was not the major thing. So I'm interested to find out, as this year concludes, talking with the schools that I work with and saying, hey, are you using that a lot more now? It is part of their overall score. So it does make a difference. Keep in mind the GRE is a test not just for business school, but also history majors and astrophysicists. So all of the graduate degrees, that it's intended for all of them. And some of that's just, there's kind of a wider set of things that we need to focus on. And I get business schools may want to focus on looking at these charts and graphs and data. It's become a more and more important thing. Data analysis and business analytics is blowing up like crazy. And I can get why maybe on that business section, that would be why they'd go there. Right now, business is about 13% of test takers of the GRE. So we've got the other, here comes the math, 87% of schools out there and applicants out there that aren't applying for business school. So business school has its input, but it's not the only one that we serve.
Okay, that's good to know. And good job on the calculation, 87.
I had my calculator for backup, though.
All right, well, I'm going to get a little bit more technical now with some numbers here, so buckle up.
All right.
While each question, definitely requires different lengths of time, and that'll vary from person to person also. I know there's supposed to be an average of 1.5 minutes for each of the verbal questions, while 1 minute and 45 seconds for quant. So why is quant offered more? Personally, I would have guessed verbal more, because you have to read something and digest it. but yet the quant seems to be has dedicated to it a little bit more time, right? Minute and 3/4. So why is quant get more on average per question?
My assumption there is, again, this has been the way it's always been since I've been knowledgeable of the GRE, is the physical working out of the problem. I can read through something relatively quickly, and I can, and through that read through, figure out hopefully kind of the main idea and the author's intent and opinions and things like that. On the quant section, I still have to read that problem, and not only read the problem, but then because of the difficulty of a lot of those, what in the world is this question asking me? Okay, what am I going to have to, what formulas am I using here? Am I using geometry? Am I using algebra? What is it? Take that, process that, get it on paper in a form that's going to work out to the answer, and then work out the answer. So I wasn't there for it. I'm sure that there has been research done on that. ETS does more research than I can ever keep up with. And I'm sure this was way back when they first started the GRE and realized it just takes longer to do a math problem. There's more steps involved in it, from interpretation of the original question to actual solving of it. Of course, there's some that are going to go super quick.
Yeah, sure. And thank God for those.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably in the first 12 questions, though. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Because those are typically the easier ones that are determining your next 15. So, for sure.
I mean, one of the things with timing too is that you're going to be preparing for the test, and we help students read faster, right? So that they have more time on the verbal parts and the verbal questions that require more time. But I agree with you, Eric, that reading does take some students a lot longer, which is why that's something that they really need to bump up their speed and actually taking the test. And similarly with math, you get to learn how are the questions being presented so that you can come up with different shortcuts so that you actually gain extra time on other math questions. And you look at the test holistically that way and don't think about each question being a world of itself, but that it's a cohesive whole, and that you want to be able to play strengths for when you actually do need that extra time to think through things. That's how I think we approach it that way in our test taking and our speed reading planning.
It's a strategy you teach, right? I mean, it makes sense. Yeah. This is where testing becomes like a chess game.
It's a chess game. It's a dance. We've often talked about it being like a dance. Jay, how about you sort of touched on this before, that the test is a general test, and you could be in astrophysics or comparative literature or chemistry and be taking the GRE. But how is it looked at in the marketplace itself? There was a while where businesses would actually look at the GMAT score. Do you know if there's companies that are looking at GRE scores for perspective?
That's a great question. And those are typically your very, very top consulting firms, your Bain and McKinsey and things like that. Which that is great if that is your ultimate goal, and going for an MBA is certainly a good way to do it. Honestly, that's a relatively small percentage when you look at the overall MBA world, where they're going, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of consulting. Great job if you want to go for it. They have traditionally been on the MBA, looking at the GMAT. The programs I worked at, we'd usually have maybe out of class of 200 or so, maybe like 5 to 10 that we're really looking at it. Different at different schools. No, that's different at different schools. Certainly something that if that is your absolute, you're going to Bain or McKinsey or something like that, or that's where you want to go, talk to the schools and see what the school's interaction is with those organizations. We're over here helping with the admissions. The employers are over here. And in the middle is the school. So the school kind of has to do a little bit of that talking both directions. I will say the businesses, those that I named, do know the GMAT. They've known the GMAT forever. One of the things that we at ETS have been doing is making sure that people on campus can speak about the GRE, what those numbers mean, not just, we actually call it fluency here at ETS on the business school team, partly because I was a Spanish teacher and I came up with the words. So, but I would say we need our client schools to be fluent in GRE.
Mm-hmm.
They need to understand how the scores work, how the sections work, the plus and the minus, the challenges of each, so that they can represent their students effectively with the businesses. And I'll tell you, those businesses are using it as a way to say, okay, we'll take anyone with this level of GMAT and higher, and not even look at the other resumes. It's very unfortunate, but they do. So it has been one of our initiatives to make sure the schools can speak about it. I think we're a few years into that and really good. It is one of the things on our agenda to step over even our clients and go straight to some of these HR offices and say, hey, you need to be looking at these folks as well. So in the meantime, it's the school representing you as well. But we're aware of that. It's a relatively small group in the overall picture of the MBA world that is specific to those organizations.
I like the phrase fluent in GRE for the companies as well as schools. I know that we touched upon a little bit about GRE subject tests the last time we spoke to you. In the past years, obviously, you said like 13% of business school 13% of test takers are going to business school consider the GRE.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a considerable increase in it. Is there a plan to specifically bring a GRE business test?
No one's asked for it. I know that there's the subject tests in the GRE realm of biology and physics and different sciences, mostly, maybe a couple others. There's not really been a look for that. I think that if you were using that as an admissions test, I would have never applied for business school because I didn't even know what accounting was when I applied. True fact. A lot of MBAs, you're not supposed to know. You can, but you don't have to know all the business principles when you're applying. Maybe some schools do want that, but no, they want to see, are you smart? Can you figure out a problem? Can you be adept to any situation? That's what they're looking for. The GRE gives them some of the information on, can they do the academic sort of math and verbal and writing, but that's what the rest of the application is also there for. No, I don't see that. I've not been asked by a single school about that. That being said, we do actually, with a number of schools, have what we call the major field test, and it's inside the program at graduation to say, have they learned everything that they were supposed to learn? And then schools can compare against each other and say, oh, we're in the top 10% of schools or scores for the marketing part or the accounting part. And that's something they do for their accreditation. But that's current students and a certain group of schools that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's muted.
Not following. Have some unexpected background noise I was trying to avoid. So what I was saying was, I'm just going to cut straight to it, kind of like the money question. Like, what are some factors people should consider when they're deciding between the GMAT and the GRE?
Sure. The first, I will say, they're different price points. So think about that, especially if you're one who might have to take it more than once. You're multiplying that out. I think that'd be a good question to come up with. If you take the GRE 5 times versus the GMAT 6 times.
On a train going 80 miles an hour.
Exactly. So that is one. There is a price difference. The other thing, obviously, they have a section focused more on data, using charts and graphs and whatnot. We have a writing section. Maybe we'll kind of come closer to each other in the coming years. This COVID thing has kind of sent us all over the place. But maybe that will be more similar in the future. To me, though, the biggest difference is the format of the test. And that is on the GMAT, when you answer question number 1, it determines whether question 2 is harder or easier and sets you off on a path. Now, I do understand that they do have the opportunity to change 3 of your answers in a section. But if you think about it, while you're going through, you still had to go ahead and determine, is question 2 easier or harder, even if you go back later and change your question on number 1. So it's still working in there somehow to you. Whereas on the GRE, you get 12 questions and then 15. And those 12 questions, you can move around, you can change your answers, all of that within the allotted time period. You see one that scares you, it's really challenging, skip it, do a few that feel comfortable, get the points for those that feel comfortable, and then come back to that one that scared you. You can't do that on the GMAT. GMAT, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in that order. Absolutely.
So you're saying you can ease into the test better.
Yeah. It to me, it's just a little less stressful. If I forget a formula, I can write that. Oh, question 3 was tough. I can come back to question 3, and it's not going to affect my overall score. In the GMAT, apparently you can change 3 answers now, but it still sends you on that path up or down as you answer that question or don't answer that question.
To be fair, there is a sort of way of testing on the GRE that I think is a little scary for some students, which is that not every question has just one answer, right? So you do have some questions that will have multiple answers, and so you don't live in a world of absolutes where it's like one question, one answer. You're living in a world where you can have multiple answers, and if you get 2 out of the 3 right, you get the whole answer wrong. So that is something that the GRE makes a little spicy, right?
It does, and I get that. That does sound intimidating, but I also say we're testing your principle here. If you're doing an algebra problem, they often have, when you're dealing with binomials, they have 2 answers. If you know your algebra, it typically comes out with 2 answers, often one negative, one positive. On the questions that do that, it clearly states at the bottom and at the top, this question has 1 or more answers.
Right.
So yeah, that can definitely be a bit intimidating, but it's also, you got to show that you understand the whole principle, not just get 1 answer out of it.
Right. Speaking of studying and getting ready for these tests, are there any plans down the pipeline for getting new study materials for students, and how would you advise folks to study?
Sure. And this is my teacher self talking here. As I said, I taught high school, and my kids were going after the AP test. Let me take that first part of the question first. We have updated all of our testing material or preparatory material focused on the new test. Again, it's not new material, so if you're studying before, it's still the same stuff, but the sample tests and things like that have been shortened, so you get a feeling more for that. My favorite thing that we have out there is called GRE Mentor, and it's a program. You basically put in your test date, and it figures out how far that is away from you, and then it calculates, here's the things you need to be working on today and this week, and spreads it out for you, as opposed to if you just go get a book or something, it's just going to say, here's everything you need to learn. Good luck. So it does set up a curriculum, an individualized curriculum for you to go through. It's your job to keep up on it, but it's like your teacher saying, here's what you need to study. As far as, what I recommend, if I were taking the GRE today, when I took it, as I mentioned, I was a public high school teacher. I was not wealthy. I was not able to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to go to a test prep place. I would have loved to, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. What I always suggest first is take a practice test. Before you do anything else, lock yourself in a room or a library or Starbucks, and actually take that now 1 hour and 58 minutes it takes on the GRE, much better than when it was 4 hours, and just take a whole test. For me, we had computers when I was taking it, obviously, but they weren't, as individualized, customized they are now. So I had a book, 400 pages for GMAT is what I took at the time. I took a whole test, and then I saw, oh, I forgot this, this, and this, but I am awesome at this, this, and this. Do not, under any circumstance, waste your time at the things you're already awesome with. It may make you feel good. It may make you, like, oh, look how good I'm doing on all this study stuff. Well, you knew that already. Go over here and study the questions that you missed. And I did it in a way, because this is how I did it in my classes as well. You answer it once, and then if you go back, and with all the computer stuff, I don't know you can do it this way quite the same, but I would just say, okay, I got this question wrong. And then before I got the right answer out of a book somewhere, I'd go back and try the problem again and see, oh, did I make a mistake? Where's my mistake? And then if I could figure out at that time, I'm like, okay, I'm medium at this. I just got a few things I got to remember. If I still missed it, that's what I need to study the most. That was, my way of doing it. So many programs, so many organizations out there that can help.
There's so many different ways to do those things. I don't know. I'm also a big fan of like confidence building. I think confidence and believing in yourself plays so much into everything we do. And so I totally feel you on like, oh, don't just do the stuff that's easier that comes naturally to you, because you're not really improving much. You already know you're good at that. Yet having those small successes, I think, can keep you going for the hard stuff too. So there's some kind of balance to be struck. But again, everyone's different with that, right?
Yeah.
But it is important to look at what we call the four pillars of test taking success, which is content, strategy, time management, and mindset. And so a student can know all the material on the test, but if they don't have confidence, they feel that they can't take tests, then maybe it's just the confidence they have to work on, right? So it just really depends on the student. That's how we look at it. Is there anything else, Jay, that you'd like us to know about the GRE that we haven't asked you about?
Well, I was going to, we were talking about time on each question a little bit earlier, and I wanted to inject, and I didn't get a chance at that point. If you are someone who has some sort of issue that has been identified by some sort of doctor, for example, talking about your time on per question, etc. I know, because I've been a teacher and I've seen this over and over, I know I have ADHD, and no one ever identified that back in the 1980s when I was growing up. A lot of you out there may have that, or may know that that's something, or maybe, colors of the screen are an issue, or other things like that. You have the option to, if you have something like that, to work with ETS when you register for the GRE, to get extra time on your test, or the change of the colors of on the screen, or things like that. I will say it is a process, because you have to prove it. You're going to have to come with the doctor's note and the whole bit. But if that is you, take advantage of it. I'll tell you, have been working with someone that I've met through work, but I've known for years. She's in her 20s, and she's applying for some of the top level schools this year. And I wrote one of her recommendation letters. And she told me, we met for coffee one day. She said, Jay, I have to go retake the GRE, but this time I'm taking it with the accommodations. And she said, I didn't ask for the accommodations before, and it ran over me. And then she went back and took it. She's got an interview at every one of the top 25 schools that she applied for, because her score went up, because she got the modifications appropriate for her. So don't just pass up that screen. If you know you have something, then you can do something about it. Again,
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that, because the GRE is a test coming from the States. So when I speak of non-Americans, I hate the word international students, because everyone's an international student depending on where you are. But non-American people, how can they go about doing this? Because they might have a different system in their home country. Does this are the accommodations met for non-Americans?
Yeah, the accommodations are still met for non-Americans. There's a process I laid out on our website. If you click through that section, you'll see what you have to do. Um, sometimes I think we may be overdiagnosed in the U.S. on some of these things, if I may say so, and certainly underdiagnosed in other places. But so you're going to have to look through that in your country, how you can meet those requests that we have, which is going to include a doctor's
They
notification.
can find this under what? If they do a search on the GRE website, it's called, is this under
Just do GRE accommodations. It's probably the quickest way to Google straight to the page.
Okay.
Quick question as a follow-up also, 25 schools? She applied to 25 schools?
No, and she applied to all schools in the top 25.
Oh, okay, got it.
All that we could.
A lot of schools.
No, she did not apply to 25. I think she applied to 8, which maybe is to also say, hey, you may be not only taking the GRE more than once, you might be applying to multiple schools. So be ready. This is a cumbersome time.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This is all the time that we have for our episode. I also want to thank my co-hosts once again. It was a pleasure to see everybody. And And MBA hopefuls, if you liked this show, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube station. And if you want to stay above all of the trends and what's happening with the testing, with schools, with applying to business school, please follow us and come back and watch other episodes. And don't forget to check us out next week, same time, same channel. And we look forward to seeing you and look forward to seeing new wonderful guests on our program. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.